Next up in the Monster Artillery series is the big bony giant. Yes, indeed, the Bowmen of Khemri, these giant animated constructs, hulking monstrosities with magical bows up against Dark Elves. So here we are, they're going to be supported by Khalida. They both got Blessing of Asaph active currently, so their missile damage is buffed. Keep that in mind, but 831 missile damage over 10 seconds with that buff from Khalida. Keep in mind it is both buffing both reload rate and missile damage. So yeah, but plus 200 bonus versus large as well. We kind of do the math there. That is 600 against large. So these guys literally hit as hard as giants in melee, but at range, which is pretty impressive. Still 400 weapon strength in melee, 30 attack, 25 defense. Not great. 80 armor is also not amazing. Here they're going to be up against some Dark Elf bolt throwers as Khalida faces off against Malice. I'm up against Samurai Warrior once again. Big shout out to him. Of course, for those of you guys who don't know, he has a channel in Italian called Legio Italica. Runs with a few others, and yeah, definitely check it out if you do speak Italian. Anyway, got some Bony Cav riding up in the distance to try and get back at those bolt throwers. Some more Nehekara horsemen right here. Carrion sitting up in the air, a whole bunch of skeleton spears and Tomb Guard with halberds. Corsairs, the Fear Spears, and yeah, Malice currently getting netted. Also got a Canine Assassin, 2 Manticores, the Bolt Throwers, and this is the strat right here. Just dirty, egregious Lord sniping. Malice is going to come in here and get netted. Both the Bone Giants just going to blast him, right? And with the Blessing of Asaph from Khalida currently active, he will take a significant amount of damage here. His one net of Ammontok is just about enough to finish him off. Although Samurai Warrior responds very well with a nice burning head here. Going to roast out one of my units of skeletons. And immediately popped Zarkan right before Malice gets finished off. I was really hoping I could finish Malice off, but then I make a pretty big mistake, leave Khalida in here. I thought, you know, let's pump that Barona's Time Warp, maybe rear charge in with the Lich Priest of Light and see if we can win. But Khalida's getting wrecked by Zarkan right now. Zarkan's a super strong character. And she also has the Assassin's Trophy. Nope, she did not. Still Tomb Strike plus Barona's Time Warp. So I do kind of lose out on the magic of that timing push, which is a little bit rough. But still, both the Bone Giants have already racked up a ton of value just from taking out Malice there. Yeah, Skeleton Horse Archers right now skirmishing, just kind of holding the flank here. The infantry fight's definitely going to go against me to a large degree, which is a bit rough. The Tomb Guard with Halberds will do okay. It's currently trading all right against those Corsairs. But really, the name of the game is, have I done enough against Mr. Malice Darkblade here? And now the Bone Giants are going to be forced to fight in melee, which you can see they're not really doing much damage at all to these Dread Spears. Even with the My Will Be Done of Khalida nearby, the extra melee attack, it still only puts them up to, what? Yeah, 31 is their base. This is really not great, let's say that. And right now, Zarkan fighting this Bone Giant here, just doing a ton of damage to him. You can see that the Bone Giant's not really making any contact with Zarkan, so that is definitely something to be aware of with the Bone Giants, is that their melee attack is really terrible. They have good weapon strength in melee, but their stats are just so poor that it's hard to really make them do anything. Like, I was really wishing I had saved that Barona's Time Warp now, because I could pop it in this big blob here, hit like the Manticore. His Bone Giant might be able to actually hit Zarkan a couple times with that active as well. Just would have been a little bit better. Now is also moving in with these Skeleton Horsemen, which great little Soul Stealer, Reaper of Souls from Zarkan, gonna help to drain them out. And the 2 Bone Giants. We do net this Manticore, and my intention was to try and shoot it. Which you can see the Bone Giants can, if you're good about keeping them on their attack orders, they can still fire while in melee, which is something to be aware of as well. But yeah, 1 Manticore shattered, 1 Manticore is gone. The balance power is not looking great, but I figure if I can maybe weather Zarkan, this would be okay. But a nice little fireball hit right there. We come in with the Tomb Strike, really hoping for just a big terror rout at this point. If Zarkan goes down here, and he does indeed go down, so big leadership debuff for the Dark Elves. Some Shabti here are about to leave the battlefield, though. Their summon timer is just about up, which is a big problem, but we do manage to proc a big terror rout here, get some of those Fear Spears on the run. The Skeleton Horseman Archers coming in clutch as they have used up all their ammunition, also charging up on the 2nd level to get at those repeater crossbows there, just kind of force them away, not allow them to fire at the Bone Giant. Yeah, the Tomb Guard with Halberds also still holding out, but this Canine Assassin is still here. He's still shooting with his poison missiles. He doesn't have the most AP in the world, but decent enough AP that he's doing kind of plinks over time, just little chip damage here and there, and I don't really have a way of going and shutting him down. Lita also will take chip damage from him, and I really can't afford that at this point. That big tear route was nice, but a lot of the units are likely to come back. I don't really have the resources to pursue, and I'm also kind of splitting up my Tomb Guard here, which is not great. These Tomb Guard over-chasing definitely need to be protecting, because this is imminent. Feral Manticore comes back. We're going to try and throw one more Barona's Time Warp here to get some extra attack on these horsemen, and the Tomb Guard also more speed to reposition, get in and take that Manticore down. But, oh man, just friendly fire the Lich Priest right there. That was bad. I didn't even catch that during the replay. That probably cost me the game right there as I hit critical army losses. So, yeah, Bone Giants, they're pretty good. Don't get me wrong, even though I showcased a loss here, credit to Samurai Warrior, I probably deserved to lose because that was very egregious Lord sniping. You can see, yeah, Malice himself got 0 damage value, but somehow dealt 8,993 damage. I don't really get that. I think that's probably something to do with the Zarkan form. It still somehow records his damage dealt, but not his damage value. That's very interesting. We'll have to check that out another time. But great job with the Sorcerer's Lower Fire too. Burning Heads on point. Samurai Warrior played quite a few games with me in this session, and all of his Burning Heads were, for the most part, on point. Although I think the Norska game, he kind of roasted his own troops. How about the K-Knight Assassin too? Doing great, paying for himself, helping to anchor and stabilize until the late game, and that extra little chip damage as well. But the tail of the tape was about the Bone Giants, right? So let's hot swap back over here, and you can see both of them, kind of between the two of them, paid for themselves. Keep in mind, some of that value is a little bit inflated because they did the damage to Malice and not Zarkan. I don't know exactly how that works, but I would still say they both generally paid for themselves. It was kind of the other elements of my army that didn't do enough, like the Carrion. Also, Skeleton Horsemen did a great job shutting down the bolt throwers. It was just a little bit late, and also I didn't fully chase them off. I allowed them to come back. Tomb Guard and Infantry just in general here was probably the weakest point of my army. Tomb King Infantry, I need to do some more testing, but I mean the Skeleton Spearmen just aren't great. The Tomb Guards, I like both variants, but you can only take so many of them. Build like this. Kalita also did not pay for herself. She had a really rough engagement when Zarkan popped forms there. That, in hindsight, for me, was a pretty big mistake, even engaging there. I should have just kept her back and kind of protecting the Bone Giants, which is really where she should have been, helping to see off the Manticores and just try and tar pit Zarkan with some other units. But anyway, you live and learn. Bone Giants, I would say, definitely still paid for themselves, and it also kind of showcases both their strengths and weaknesses in a single replay, which is why I figured it was good to show you guys. Back to the Dark Elves, though. Fear Spears did okay. Corsairs, same thing. They trade all right into the Skeleton Infantry. Dark Riders also, some nice cost-effective rear chargers. Repeater Crossbows did okay. Manticores, for once, not paying for themselves. I was able to manage them pretty well, but Zarkan, man, just came in and ruined my day, along with this kind of infantry spam here. And I do notice, after playing quite a few games with and against the Dark Elves, the buffs they gave to some of their lower tier infantry in the last patch, it does seem like it's helped quite a bit in some of those incidental engagements where previously they were losing, and now like their infantry is pretty clearly better than the skeletons, which it should be. Anyway, that's enough for today. About that, let's just quickly finish up in terms of the Bone Giants. Their missile damage, single target missile damage, is probably the best of any monster artillery, and they're not super expensive. Like, they're 1,600, which is kind of middle of the pack for this unit class, right? So they're pretty solid, and especially given that you have access to Lore of Light and also missile and reload skill buffs, you can buff them up even more. Their main downsides are, though, like I said, lack of melee attack and slow speed makes them somewhat vulnerable, especially if your opponent's expecting it or if they have the correct build. They're also not super flexible. Because of that, they do have a really good amount of HP, but not as much armor as something like a steam tank, right? And yeah, the speed is quite poor at only 32, whereas a steam tank obviously is going to be much faster and unbreakable and everything. But the missile damage is definitely there. All it takes is a few hits. They did nerf the accuracy of these guys a while back, which I think was warranted. They were a little bit arguably too strong before. They're still a very, very strong unit, but RNG can sometimes punch you right in the face and just say, no, you miss, and miss again, and then things can very quickly spiral out of control. Double Bone Giant's pretty risky. It's a lot more common now to see like one Bone Giant plus a casket as sort of an anti-infantry, one anti-infantry, one anti-large artillery, or sometimes you might mix in like, you know, catapults against maybe a horde faction to try and keep their leadership routed. There's a few different things you could do in terms of support, but the fact that you have Lore of Light, I mean, both Barona's Time Warp, right, for the melee attack and speed buff, and also Net of Amantok do synergize very well with Bone Giants. The other magic, I mean, Nehekara, technically you have this spell that buffs missile damage, but it's really not amazingly efficient. If there ever is a unit to use it on, it's on the Bone Giant, but at the same time, I mean, if they miss while that timing push is up, then you've just missed out on all your wins of magic, right? Or if they're, you know, not able to fire, if they get bogged down or distracted or whatever else. So I don't typically favor this. It is relatively cheap, though, so if you're trying to maximize, for example, true missile spam with Kotep, spell spam with Kotep, and just keep your opponent's abilities shut down with this Lich Staff, then it is a third option to take on top of these other two very cheap spells. You can spam this one also. And, you know, if you're running some missile units, Ashabti Great Bows, Bone Giants, whatever else, that's kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. But it's there, just so you're aware, it is there. The Necrotect obviously can heal Bone Giants. He also has this little melee attack and armor-piercing damage buff, which is nice for them. Just helps to equalize their stats a little bit. Missile resistance and armor is okay. Generally, these abilities you cut because you're trying to minimize cost on this guy, but he does have some things certainly to consider. So hopefully guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.